Unshelling Medicine Podcast. Healthcare in the language we understand.
Hello, everybody. Welcome again. We have an incredible episode for you today. So I have the pleasure of meeting with Lauren Callahan today. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you. So we're going to be talking a lot about things that affect us every day: nutrition, gut health, the good stuff. So Lauren, do you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, I am the owner of Goddess Health. I work with women who are having issues in midlife with energy and sleep and bloating, with recovery, inflammation. And I also authored the book, Powerful and Not Tired.
I love it. So when we talk about energy, I know a lot of women are now really tapping into and tuning into their energies, right? So how important would you say that is in just healing ourselves?
Well, honestly, I would say, incredibly important. And here's why. First of all, firsthand experience, not having energy is very much a bummer in midlife. We have families and kids maybe and jobs and things that we have to do and things that we want to do. But honestly, that really came from me talking with woman after woman after woman. And what I would hear every single time is, I'm so tired. I'm just so tired all the time. I really thought that I was going to be working towards something fancier when it came toward health and wellness. But that's what I heard from women all the time is, I'm just tired.
It's a great conversation. I can relate. And we are going to talk about nutrition and how that ties into everything. So talking about women in midlife or career women in general, how important, again, going back to importance of things in our lives, is eating a healthy, balanced diet.
Yeah, I would say it's of primary importance. We have to consider a couple things. One is that food is fuel and food is medicine.
Right.
It's not just something that makes us feel good. I mean, it can be. Even eating healthy and balanced and everything else, yes, it can make you feel good. But it's food and it's medicine. You can't put junk into your car and expect it to run, right? And our bodies are no different. And the other thing is that, when we're talking about nutrition and more broadly the gut, so gut health involves more than nutrition, but nutrition is certainly of primary importance. Scientists are calling the gut your second brain, and there's a good reason for that. It's related to everything. Right. So what I know is that when a woman says, I'm tired, well, your energy is related to your gut health. Right. If a woman says, I can't fall asleep at night because, I have racing thoughts or whatever it is, your sleep is related to your gut health intimately, right? A woman in midlife who's saying, I've always been able to handle my stuff, and now I'm crabby all the time, and I'm biting people's heads off just for breathing, and I'm crying for what feels like no reason. Well, that is actually very intimately related to your gut health, right? Like everything goes back to your gut. Right. So yes, I know that it can feel like we don't have time for good nutrition. Like it's just easier to be convenient. Of course, we have busy lifestyles, a lot of us. But truly, and I don't mean to sound so cliche here, but it is true. We don't have the time to not give to good nutrition.
Right. So talking about time, right? Busy mom, managing life, family, other responsibilities, a career or two. Time is always the catalyst in a sense, right? What advice would you have for a woman that finds herself this busy? Because you did say you don't want to sound cliche. And I know you've heard that time and time again. So it's like, I just don't have time to meal prep. I just don't have time to, pick the right foods, or where do I start?
Yeah. So two things that I would say. For one, I really want to validate that that's not all in your head, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's true. It's true. Like we are busy and hardly have time to think for ourselves. Right. It's not all in your head. And yet what I would say is that there's a really important mindset shift that needs to happen. two really important mindset shifts. And one, I would say, is bringing in the idea of what is often called an abundance mindset.
Yeah.
So going from, I don't have enough time,
Mm-hmm.
to truly telling yourself and just suspending disbelief for a minute and saying, okay, I have enough time for everything that I need to do. And, I remember doing this for myself actually one time. And it was crazy. I mean, I kind of joke about it, but I feel like the calendar in front of me like rearranged. When I said, okay, I have enough time for everything that I need to do, then I could look at my calendar and I could really be a lot more clear-headed about what was important, what's not, what needs to come first, what do I need to let go. But it started with that mindset shift of I have enough time for everything that I need to do.
Right.
The second thing that I would say is, and this is what I call the goddess first principle, and I write about it in my book, Powerful Not Tired, because I'm pretty passionate about it. It's something that I had to learn for myself, and it's something that I bring to my clients who are busy with careers and families and on paper have no time. So this mindset shift, let me explain where it came from, if that's okay.
Absolutely, please.
There's a book out there called Profit First. Have you ever heard of it?
I've heard of it. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's written by a guy named Mike, something that I can't pronounce. I can't say his last name. So I'll derail for just a second to explain the premise of his book, because it's really important here. In his book, Profit First, which my disclaimer is that I have not read it. Okay. I have spent some time with a coach around that book. But what Mike said was that, if I were to ask you what is profit, you would probably say something like, well, profit is your income minus your expenses equals whatever you have left over as profit.
Yeah.
And what I realized in hearing this is that we as human beings, but I really want to call out women here, like we as women tend to look at ourselves and our self-care, our self-nurturing in the same way. So we have our time and energy that we start with minus the time and energy that we have to devote to everything else and to everybody else, all of our responsibilities, equals whatever we have left over is what we have for us. And we all know how that goes at the end of the day, right? And so what Mike said, as far as businesses go, he said that for a business to be profitable, you've got to flip that equation. You've got to do your income minus what you put aside for profit first equals whatever you have left over is for your expenses and everything else. Now, so that is the end of it for me as far as his book goes. And he says it works. And so, check him out if you're interested. But what I realized was that this is so, so true for us as human beings.
Right.
If we want to be healthy, happy, dear God, like thriving human beings,
Yes.
and fully human, like fully ourselves, we have to flip that equation. We have to take it to where it is our time and energy minus what we put toward our self-care first equals whatever we have left over for everybody else. And so here's what I want to say really quickly for that is that I'm obviously not advocating that we neglect our children. We all intuitively know what that means for us. But here's why I can say that and know that it's okay. Because what I've seen with myself and what I see with my clients over and over again is that the people that get this, they actually find out that it's no longer a subtraction equation. It's addition. So when you have your income, your income, your energy and time that you start with, plus what you put toward your self-care, self-love, self-nurturing first equals now you have exponentially more time and energy to give to other people and the things that you care about and your work and family, like you're more present and loving and, kind, right? For these other people. So you're not taking it away, right? Yeah. You, by being selfish, you're not actually selfish. Like you're actually doing the most selfless thing that you can for other people.
Right. I love that this conversation is centered around women because we are notorious for putting others in front of us. I think it's like a societal guilt tripping for women to dare care for themselves or think about themselves or put themselves first. And the thing that I learned as a mother and also a working woman is that when I am not at 100%, everything around me suffers,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I've learned to let go of that guilt and, take time and take care of myself. Yes, it is a journey. It's a journey. In other areas of my life, I've put those stop losses, since we're talking about business, stop losses in place to kind of like take care of myself or step back to reevaluate what I need at that time on the nutrition part and say weight loss or whatever. I am working on that. It is a constant work. It's not struggle, is work. Because again, like you said, with my mindset, you really have to come from a place of abundance instead of lack, because there will never ever be enough hours in a day, ever, to do everything. So I absolutely love how you brought in the abundance mindset and also this loss and gain thing, profit. At the end of the day, everybody gains when you take care of yourself. So I absolutely love that. So when it comes to where to start, right? A lot of us like, okay, so now you've told me all of this stuff. Where do I start, right?
And specifically, do you mean with self-care or do you mean with nutrition?
With nutrition, right? Okay, I want to learn how to eat better, right? I want to learn how to nourish my body with the right stuff. I want to learn how to not put junk in my body, right? Because from, say, college years, I'm used to ramen and chips, right? So how do I how do I turn that around? So, again, people do struggle because some bad eating habits take years to build, right? And, you kind of forget how to eat healthy if you have that habit, right? So, for somebody who naturally wants to make a change, but do not know where to start, what would you say to that woman listening?
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I'd say a few things, and one will, for a moment, sound cliche, but I'll go into it further. So,
Right.
first is to take it step by step, right? And yes, like we all know that, but practically, I would say that we tend to not put that in practice, right? Like we want to lose weight, so we, go on this, very restrictive diet, right? That's not a step by step thing, right? Like that's trying to handle everything at once, right? So, God, when I work with women, like I would tell you, it's one of the most compassionate experiences that you would ever think. Because I have people that come in and they're ready to, get rid of like 20 bad habits and introduce 50. And, I usually end up putting the brakes on people. I'm like, no, we're going to find what's most important for you, like the low-lying fruit, and also what's going to get you the most gain. And that's individual, right? That's so individual, which is, one reason why I start off with gut health testing, because
Okay.
it shows us like where your gut is at. And it show and I say your gut, but remember it's just your second brain. So it really gives us insight into the bigger picture of
Yeah.
like stress, of nutritional balance, of, are you having like too many carbs or too much protein? Like, is that out of balance, right? So we find the thing that is most impactful for you. And then it's one step at a time, because you're a human being, right? And your body does not like for so many things to get changed at once. Like we have a built-in homeostasis mechanism, right? Like where our body wants balance. Even if you are introducing good changes, your body doesn't necessarily like that at first because it's change, right? And it's not familiar. So all that to say, like, don't go for the extreme, highly restrictive kind of things in most cases. I'm not saying that like there's not a time and place for that, because sometimes there truly is.
Right.
In general, if you're looking to change habits, right, start with one at a time. And there are some really great places to start, right? For example, if you find yourself in a fight with like sweets, for example, right? And that's a really tough one. If you make the decision to cut sweets out of your life, and I've done this before, your body immediately produces a hormone that makes you crave it more. So is really tough.
So much betrayal.
Yes, I know. And I remember I did this at one point, and the first week was just murder. And the second, and I used to be a pastry chef. Okay. Like you look at me and say like, oh, she's, thin and healthy and whatever. But like, I used to be a pastry chef. Okay. So cutting out sugar was a thing for sure. But yeah, the first week was murder. The second week was really tough. The third week, I was like, I don't really know that I even want. And then the fourth week, I was like, no, definitely don't want it. Right. Like, so, I mean, your body does adjust. That was a very quick restrictive measure. Okay. So that maybe is contrary to what I just said. But what I was going to say is, for example, if you are trying to cut out sweets in your life because too much highly refined sugar is absolutely horrible to your health, it stresses your body to no end. Don't be in a fight with yourself. Just start off with, when you're craving it, don't go to it yet. I tell people like, hold off for a second. Like ask that part of you that wants to eat those cookies, just to wait for a minute. First, go eat some high quality fats like whole milk or nuts and seeds or coconut or avocado or like something with healthy high fat content. Eat that first and then just see if you even want the sweets, right? Maybe you'll just eat less, right? Maybe you don't want it as much, right? So don't get in a fight with yourself over things like that. Breakfast, right? Like if you want to start small and think about, okay, what are some small changes I can make? Let's start with breakfast because breakfast, you really can set yourself up for success for the rest of the day with like your blood sugar levels and things like that. So, don't stress over every meal and every snack. Start with having high quality, high protein breakfast that is going to get you going for the rest of your day, and let that be your focus this week, right? So find some of those like key points and just find the way to make it better, right? Without having to change everything at once.
Thank you. That's very insightful. You touched on testing, which I'm very happy that you did, because healthy living, especially with nutrition or weight loss or whatever it is a lifestyle change, and we're very, very individual, right? So starting out with gut testing to see where you stand, where your microbiome's levels are, and also understanding what the need is very important. A lot of nutritional, or I don't want to call them bad nutritional habits, but they are actually bad nutritional habits, does not always stem from overeating. Sometimes it's undereating, and sometimes it's hormonal as well, right? So in doing this gut testing, do you focus on hormonal weight gain, things like high cortisol level, as opposed to just calorie intake? And also, how do you support your clients through the disappointment that comes with not meeting expectation or whatever it was, or, falling off the wagon, so to speak?
Yeah, that's really great. So if I miss one of those questions, like remind me for
Sure.
Yeah, because it's all related. So, okay. So one thing I do not do is focus on calorie intake. That is like a losing battle that I would never win if I had to do it. That is like, I cannot even imagine. And my heart goes out to the people that do it. So no calorie counting. So what I would say is it's much more intuitive and does focus on those factors that you were bringing up, right? Like, yes, nutritionally, what we're eating, but, just the quality of things that we're eating. So for example, with one person, like I'm not touching calorie counting, but what I do know, for example, is that they have an over-reliance on protein shakes, right? Like a lot of women are like, oh, I need more protein. So we go to a protein shake, and actually it totally works against you for your gut health. So we just focus on, ditching the protein shake at least some of the week and finding a high quality protein to have instead, right? No calorie counting involved. And yet, like that simple measure does worlds for their gut health and their work toward losing weight, right? Like not all my clients are trying to lose weight, but some are. I have other women that, their diet is like really close to great. But like you mentioned, the cortisol and the stress levels are actually really, really negatively impacting their ability to have their hormones in balance and to be at the weight they want, especially like with belly fat. A bloating and things like that. So,
Right.
so we focus on bringing those gut metabolites like back into balance, right, through nutrition and lifestyle. And that impacts, again, their ability to lose weight. It impacts like their hormonal balance. I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember the last thing you brought up.
About the disappointment that comes with not, meeting goals.
Yeah,
Say if it was weight loss, the scale has a way of not moving sometimes, or you feel like, okay, I should have had that self-control. I just had to have that cupcake. Why?
yeah.
Right. So how do you support your clients through going through those disappointing moments?
Yeah, so I would say, from the get-go, I help my clients to have the most compassionate mindset for themselves. And it just makes all the difference. I find so many of these women, like for the first time, they're not calorie counting or, trying to follow this like particular program or something that was frustrating to them. And now, like, this has happened again and again, where they actually start eating more food and they start losing weight, right? Like almost immediately, which is really cool to watch. I have other women that, they made so many healthy changes and the scale was not reflecting it. But we walked through their goals and how they felt. And in the end, and this was often maybe like, a month or two in or something. When they looked at it, they started thinking, actually, so the scale is staying the same at the moment, but actually I feel better than I've ever felt.
Right.
And, I've had women say like the scale is still the same number. And yet I went down a pant size.
Right.
Like their bodies were changing, right? The body composition. And there's so many things that go into that. I mean, yeah, like for some people it's like the muscle thing, right? And I mean, there are a lot of things that are going on there.
Right.
But so in one sense, it's sometimes like redefining their expectations, especially like, okay, the scale's the same, but I feel awesome and my pant size are going down. Like, what does a scale even matter at this point? Right? And then also, again, just taking that very compassionate approach that, sometimes like sometimes it's not going to go perfectly. Like sometimes you're in a social situation or an event comes up or something like that. And then often what we do is just kind of take a look at, how did you feel afterward? And sometimes you're like, well, I felt like shit. Like I don't
It
want
happens.
and
It's so good until, right?
yeah. And then what happens is they come out of this mindset of, oh, I should or I shouldn't. And, oh, I didn't do the thing. They come out of that completely and are actually like, I didn't really feel good and I don't really want to do that again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, changing expectations, redefining expectations, taking that more compassionate mindset to yourself, which really opens the doors for you to enjoy being healthy and feeling better.
That is solid advice. I like not changing the expectation, but adjusting the expectations because it's a great mindset work that you do with people. Is sounding like is like, okay, whatever you came, like all the baskets of expectation you brought, okay, pause, put them down, okay, one at a time. So I absolutely love that approach to things because sometimes we can actually drown our own progress with expectation, unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
So talking about diet, because I want to talk about fat dieting and importance of finding the right way to eat and actually finding the right coach to help you through that process. Just because a diet worked for Sally down the street does not mean it's going to work for me. And that is mostly based on what you mentioned. What is my body composition and does my body need? So being a nutritional coach and an energy healer and coach and something along that area of wellness and self-care. We talked about expectations, so I'm going to change up the question a little bit. What would you say to a woman who's actively trying, any of the fad diets on the market, right? You name it. There's too many of them that, will sit here all day. So
Yeah.
what would you say to a woman who's actually trying, to change their life, not necessarily lose weight, just eat healthier, increase their wellness or reverse chronic disorders? right? Talking about the gut as a second brain. So what can you say to us?
Yeah. So one thing I'd say is that I take the stance that you know your own body better than I do, better than anybody does. And so you have to trust that intuition.
Okay.
Now, then, but of course, like this is why we work with other people and hire coaches and stuff, because like sometimes somebody else is just the expert, but still,
Right.
You know your own body and you know your own needs. And I think it's important for, like, if somebody works with me or if they work with anybody, that person, defers to that intuition and trusts it. Yeah. So I take the stance that if somebody is really like wanting to do a certain kind of, diet or whatever, I'm going to be supportive in the best way that like I ethically can be.
Right.
Obviously if somebody's like, I need to eat marshmallows all day long, I'll be like, we need to talk about that. But in general,
right.
I want to find the thing that's most supportive. So for example, intermittent fasting, dear God, there's so much like research and conflicting views and things like that. And I generally take the stance, and this is based off of, gut health and work with dietitians, that, a certain level of fasting is good. Like it gives your body a break, but women can very quickly do it too long, and they don't need to go as long as men do because it affects us differently. And so what I'm getting at is I've had women who, it was really important to them to do intermittent fasting, not just for the weight loss, but also mentally. It helped them to create barriers. Like if they weren't eating at this certain time, then they would be less likely to eat junk, right? And so, I can get that all day long. Like she was fasting too much, like it was working against her. But I could recognize, the motivation and the needs that were there. So we worked with that, right? Like we worked to create a healthier fasting window, but also, to help her create like the mental barriers that she still needed that helped her not to like fall into junk food eating, right? So, I think it's important to like support a person's intuition. Now, the other thing I would say, as far as, like you said, like somebody's like trying all the things and just trying, right? This is where like I just stand by it 100% that like it is so important to test your gut health, right? Again, that's why I do it first thing, because you can be eating 100% perfect diet, like, dear God, whatever that means, right? you can be eating... Yeah, you can be eating perfectly, but if your gut is not healthy, then you are going to have an uphill battle with losing weight. And, this is part of my own story, not the weight loss part, but I originally, when I checked into gut health and originally got curious about it, my goals were athletic and endurance performance, right? And I was eating healthy. And that was the question I kept coming back to, is like, okay, wait, I'm eating healthy, but what if my gut is not healthy enough to receive it? And that was the question that I needed to ask. That was exactly right. And it's true in weight loss as well. And, obviously with a lot of other goals that women can have, you can be doing all the things and eating a great diet, but if your gut is in an unhealthy state, then there's work there to do first as far as like nurturing and healing your gut so that it really is able to like process and utilize the good nutrition that you're giving it. So if you don't do that, it's quite possible that you are just going to keep having an uphill battle with weight loss, because gut health is totally related to weight loss. And then the final thing I would say to that, this is a very general statement, but you brought up the fad diets. Like in general, what I would say, yes, sometimes they're great, maybe as a reset. Right. Absolutely. They can have their value there. But in general, your gut likes balance. It wants balance. Yes. It wants food, and it wants food from like all the food groups, and it wants high quality, but protein and fat, and it wants carbs. Like it wants all the things, right? So in general, like if you're doing something that is like cutting all that out, your gut is not like super in love with that. But again, like, you know, I've never been one to like diet. That just hasn't been a thing for me. But I do remember for example, I tried keto one time just because I was curious. And I remember like as a reset, it was fine. And it actually showed me, like it opened my eyes to how much like sweets are in like everything.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I remember coming out of it and I drank a glass of milk and I went on to drink 3. I was like, this is the most wonderful stuff ever. And it's almost like it's dessert, right? Like only being on a keto diet could make you feel like drinking milk as a dessert, right? So, I mean, it had its value as like a reset and just kind of like an opener, but like it's not a way of life. Again, this is a general statement that's not true for everybody necessarily, but in general, your gut really likes balance.
Right. And I like how you brought it back to it's great for reset, because truth be told, fat diets are usually not sustainable long term.
Yeah.
There's usually much of a struggle staying on them than sticking to them long term. When it comes to testing, your program, because I'm in healthcare, there's an approach to care that it's all encompassing and it's like a team effort, right? So do you work with, say, specialty labs where these testings are done, or do you work directly with the person's primary care provider to make sure that the person attains an optimal level of health?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do not work with people's primary care providers, but I do encourage them, you know, to continually like be in contact with them, as well as like other providers that we notice along the way are really important, right? Like I was talking with a client the other day and she was saying some things that sounded like she needed a pelvic floor therapist, right? So we talked about like getting that process going. So yeah, including like everybody that we possibly can. The specialist that I do like directly stay in contact with is a gut health trained dietitian. So, you know, we get like direct recommendations from a dietitian, like based on my client's results as far as how to improve their gut health. And then, yeah, it's a really important process, part of the process that a person like takes that and coordinates with their doctor just to make sure that like all is good to go based on those dietary recommendations. And then, you know, again, it's not just nutrition, right? Like there's so many things around lifestyle that we, you know, continue to work with as well.
Okay, that's great to know. So culturally, how does cultural food, or how is cultural food affected by the recommendation? So say somebody who has a Mexican heritage who eats tortilla on a pretty regular basis, is that something that the registered dietitian takes into consideration when planning out like a meal or recommendation?
You know, I would say though that one thing that, you know, that I'm not doing is suggesting specific meals. Now, the caveat is I do offer it as an option, but I always tell people, treat it more like you're scrolling through Instagram and getting meal ideas as opposed to like, this is the meal plan to follow. And within that meal plan, like there are, which is again, totally optional. There are a lot of options for like, include this, don't include this, right? So you can be a little more culturally sensitive, dietary preference sensitive. But the bigger focus is on, you know, an array of foods that you can choose from and that give you ideas for getting the specific kind of nutrients that you need. So for example, if I am testing a client and see that their serotonin levels are low, right? So a lot of people familiar with that as a neurotransmitter, but it is also a gut metabolite. And little known fact, 90% of your body's serotonin is actually produced in your gut. So here we go, gut health and your mood. They're totally related. Yeah. So if I test your gut and see that your serotonin is low, then that is a clue in that there are a couple of things, right? So serotonin actually is a downstream metabolite from tryptophan, which is an essential amino acid that we get from high quality proteins, such as chicken thighs, right? So if somebody's low on serotonin, we're going to look at, hey, these are some different types of proteins that you get tryptophan from.
Right.
We should be eating more of these. Okay, so let's figure out how to include that more in your diet. And if you have it on a tortilla over rice or whatever, right? Like
Right.
whatever like is culturally like relevant for you.
Right.
Omega-3s support the production of serotonin in your body. So we're going to look at what are foods that you can get omega-3 from that you can add into, for example, the things you already like or the things you're already cooking, or maybe you tried this once and liked it, and we can do more of that, right? So we find the things that you need more of to support your gut health and its healing and just building a healthy gut. And we, have the array of options, and how do we get this more in your life in a way that makes sense for you, right? So you're not trying to do something that like you've never cooked and doesn't make sense for you. You don't even like.
It's important that it kind of like fits into the person's life and the person's dietary needs or dietary habits, I should say, when it has to do with culture, because I know that's a place where a lot of nutrition recommendation does lack. And I know that is where most patients that I talk to who are either diabetic or have one chronic disorder or the other that, the diet is affected, struggle because the recommendation is often around the Western cultural food as opposed to including their cultural food. Another group of patients that often are left out, which I'm seeing more and more practice include vegetarian or vegan, patient with vegan or vegetarian diet. The more and more supplement recommendation to make up for those, important amino acids that they're missing from consuming animal protein.
Yes.
So that was an important bit. So now we're going to we're talking about serotonin. Let's move into moods and, balancing emotions. Let's talk about Reiki, right? How important is Reiki with mindset, mood, and also balancing a person? I am all for energy healing. So for people who are not familiar, so how would we introduce a potential client who may be listening and like, maybe I want to try that out. So how would we introduce them to Reiki?
So I'll explain a little bit about Reiki and then my personal love around like the beauty of it for our mood, right? And emotional balance. So Reiki is an energy healing practice. We're all made of energy. And so this is simply where a Reiki practitioner channels Reiki, which is universal life energy, to the person receiving it. Now, little known fact maybe is that, Reiki is traditionally done in person, but it can be done at a distance, which allows me, for example, to work with people all over the world. And this is how I initially received Reiki, was from a distance. Yes, I had my doubts. I was a skeptic because, you don't use like Zoom technology or you don't do it, right? It was just like, okay, it's going to happen at this time. Get comfortable.
Right.
That's how it goes, right? So, I had to suspend a little disbelief, and it was very powerful and effective. So Reiki energy, it heals and it balances on all levels: physical, mental, emotional. It goes to the source, which is, reason number one why I love Reiki, along with gut health, right? Like gut health is a very like go to the source kind of healing. Like let's not treat a symptom. Reiki also is another way of going to the source of whatever is out of balance or in need of healing within your body and mind. Everyone is going to experience Reiki differently, and it just is always right. Okay. So, some people are going to maybe really feel the physical effects of Reiki, like maybe an acute pain or a chronic illness or injury, or if we're talking about like hormones, right? Like they notice a difference there. So a lot of people are really going to feel that more than anything, even detox kind of symptoms. Some people experience that. And then other people may really feel more of the mental and emotional effects, maybe like emotional kind of energies, right? That are just like, I can't ever get rid of that, or like limiting mindsets, things like that. They're able to release that. And really that's the beauty of Reiki, is that you're able to release whatever does not serve your highest good, right? I mean, God, that could even be weight, right? Like we're talking about weight loss. I mean, there's so many things there. And so, for me, being in the world of gut health came first. And so you have to consider the context. Like working on our gut health is a lifelong thing. We just always want to nurture a healthy gut. But certainly for about like 6 months time, I really like worked to heal it, right? And get it into like a really good place. So you have to think there'd been like a year that I had done this, right? As far as like keeping my gut healthy. Not once in that year did I have like a bathroom issue, nothing like ever, which was phenomenal, right? Because before, like pre-gut health, we like had bathroom issues, bloating, like all the things, right? So after I worked to heal my gut health, that was not a thing anymore. Also, when I tested my gut health, my serotonin was really low, which is amazing because I was a therapist at the time. I was like, dear God, I'm helping people every day with their mood. And like, this is obviously like an uphill battle for me, right? And I wanted to ask people too, like they'd come into my office and be like, I definitely want to help you with all the things, but can we look at your gut? And so and when I healed my gut, I could see on paper, like my serotonin levels going up and I could feel the difference. I was happier. I was falling asleep at night. Serotonin also helps initiate your digestion. Like it's a huge player in that. And so like my digestive issues were so much better. So that was in such a good place. And then I received Reiki. And all of the kinds of experiences that I described to you a minute ago, like I had all of them, right? Like I had the detox. I had what was clearly a gastrointestinal detox. And I was like, what am I detoxing from? I've been doing this gut health thing. And I don't know. And that's the thing with Reiki is you don't have to know. Like your body mind is able to release whatever is not serving its highest good. And that's what my body did. I had some other detox symptoms as well. Some people experience things with dreams. I dreamed every night for 2.5 months. It was like my mind was just slowly just releasing like whatever energy it needed to. And then also, on the mood front, so bringing it back around to your question, depression, anxiety, panic attacks, like those have been a thing for me always, but especially in midlife. Improving my gut health was, like I said, like a huge help with that because I was naturally able to just bring my serotonin levels up. But when I started practicing Reiki, I had no idea the level of freedom that I could experience from things like that, depression, anxiety, panic attacks. So its ability to balance out your mood, your mental clarity, like your hormones, all the things were phenomenal, right? Which is why I added this into my practice. I wanted to be able to bring this to other people. And, this was truly like I realized this with gut health. And then I super realized it with Reiki that your health and your emotional well-being, your wellness, all the things, it's so simple. It really is simple. Like there is not this massive amount of having to figure it out. When you can do these kinds of healing practices that heal and balance at the source, wow, your health becomes so much simpler.
Right. I couldn't agree more. I think people don't know where to turn. People really do want to do better. And the beauty about Reiki, is healing. He heals those wounds you did not even know existed, where you stored in your body emotionally. It's kind of like a channel unblocker. It's kind of like, for lack of a better analogy, forgive me, listeners, it's like a plunger. Just
like that.
It just unblocks things, right? So you just never know. So it's a therapy that it doesn't, again, just like Lauren stated, it can be done from a distance. A Reiki healer does not even have to physically touch you to heal you. So if you're, skittish about people actually touching you, guess what? Good news. No touching. So
yes, very important, especially, we're talking about mood balancing and everything else. Like if you have something in your background,
Right.
where you have a thing around people touching you.
Right.
Yeah, Reiki is so beautiful. And I feel like you bringing that up again, just I feel like I should explain a little bit more, like what a Reiki session can actually look like. Again, like some people do it in person and some people do use hands-on. For me, it's from a distance. You don't need Zoom technology or anything like that. It is the most anticlimactic thing ever experienced, and so powerful and effective, but the actual experience is so anticlimactic that it is, for example, you and I saying, okay, what time are we going to do this? And we say 8:00 on Monday. And I say, okay, great. I mean, I would like email you some print instructions, but you just find a quiet place on Monday morning at 8:00 and you sit or lie down, whichever one you want. And you just hang out for 30 minutes and you just set an intention to receive Reiki. And I tell people, set a timer on your phone so that when the time is up, you don't have to worry about that. The timer goes off and you get up and you have a glass of water because it can your body mind release. Right. Needs to. And that's it. It's so simple. It's so simple.
It is. It's worth trying out. So I absolutely love this conversation. We touched on very great topics and we discussed a lot of useful things. I know trying new things can be scary, but you can find, people that actually know what they're doing. So if you feel like you're feeling through the dark, reach out to coaches. So on the note of this podcast, we are going to include Lauren's contact information, everything she does, all the beautiful things she practices and how she helps people. We actually have something exciting. Lauren and I have something else planned. So please listen, comment, engage. Let us know what you like to learn. If there's anything in addition you like to discuss, we would love to discuss things with you. Lauren, any final words for our listeners? Anything that you would like them to understand about nutrition, balanced nutrition, and healing, Reiki healing energies?
Oh, God, I feel like we covered so much, too.
We did.
What I would say just as maybe a last, I know that you'll include links in the show notes and everything, but I think for people that are just really curious about getting to know more, in those links that I'll give you or have given you.
I have them.
I mean, there are a couple of things. Like, I just want to help set your listeners up for success, right? So on my website, goddesshealth.org, I have my book, Powerful, Not Tired. You can download it for $5, right? I mean, you can go to Amazon and pay a little bit more, but you can go to my website and get it for $5. And it just goes a lot more in depth about gut health and about Reiki and about what we talked about earlier, the goddess first principle, like self-care and self-love. It just goes more into depth about that. So again, just to really help set people up for success, a chance to go deeper into that. And for somebody who's just, I don't have as much time to read a book, I do have a free resource on there, that is just 5 things that you can do to improve your gut health that have nothing to do with nutrition. So it's a great place to start.
I love it. Thank you so much. And as mentioned, all of these resources will be in the show notes. Please browse, educate yourself, get a hold of these resources, get a hold of Lauren. And the way she practices is very impressive. She individualizes it from what I'm hearing, and testing is done. So, I mean, what can you lose but just to gain knowledge of yourself and knowledge of how you function. So thank you so much, Lauren, for being here. I'm looking forward to our next session. Yeah. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And we look forward to having you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Unshelling Medicine Podcast. If you want to stay up to date with the latest episodes, make sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to leave us a review. Follow us on social media at Altruistic Scribe on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. We share additional tips, updates, and health-related content that you won't want to miss. Have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes? Reach out to us at altruisticscribeco.com. We're always eager to hear from our listeners and tackle the health topics that matter most to you. Until next time, stay healthy and take care.